You
In a
can't do this
picture-perfect
to us!
neighborhood,
I have
a
every
single
right
mom
to do
thought
this!
she had finally found peace with her daughter and their loyal dog. But when the ruthless HOA president decided her beloved pet was a violation, everything changed. What began as petty fines soon became a campaign of harassment, humiliation, and threats to tear her family apart. With her home, her dignity, and her dog on the line, she made a choice no one expected. She took the entire HOA to court. What happened next shocked the whole community and exposed the dark side of power, control, and one woman's fight for justice. A peaceful beginning, in the quiet suburb of Meadowbrook, life seemed designed to be predictable. The lawns were trimmed into perfect squares, mailboxes gleamed with polished brass, and every house followed the same pastel color code dictated by the neighborhood's infamous Homeowners Association. For many, it was the picture of perfection. But for Emily, a single mother raising her daughter Lily, the community was more than a backdrop of conformity. It was the fragile foundation of the life she had rebuilt. Emily's world revolved around Lily and their dog, Max. Max was not just a pet, he was family. Adopted from a shelter after her divorce, Max had been the silent protector during sleepless nights, the playful companion for Lily after school, and the glue that kept the small family stitched together when everything else felt like it might fall apart. His warm brown eyes carried comfort in moments when Emily doubted herself, and his wagging tail seemed to remind them both that no matter what, love could survive hardship. At first, Meadowbrook seemed welcoming enough. Emily purchased her modest home after years of saving, hopeful she could finally give Lily stability. The neighbors smiled politely, and the HOA mailed glossy pamphlets that spoke of community values and preserving harmony. But beneath the surface, an unspoken tension lingered. The HOA's power was absolute, and resistance was rarely tolerated. For a few months, life passed smoothly. Lily thrived in school, Max bounded across their backyard chasing butterflies, and Emily felt a flicker of hope that this neighborhood might finally be the safe haven she had longed for. But like many facades, the cracks began to show in unexpected ways. It started small, an anonymous complaint about Max's barking, even though he rarely made a sound. Then came a warning letter citing excessive pet activity. At first, Emily dismissed it as a misunderstanding, but when she noticed the watchful eyes of Karen Mitchell, the HOA's president, lingering at the edge of her driveway, she sensed trouble was coming. Karen was the kind of woman who thrived on rules and control, a self-proclaimed guardian of Meadowbrook's perfection. And for reasons Emily could not yet grasp, Karen had decided Max was a violation of everything the HOA stood for. What Emily didn't know was that this was only the beginning. The peace she had worked so hard to build was about to be shattered, and Max, the loyal companion who had saved her in more ways than one, was at the center of a battle that would shake the entire neighborhood. As the first letter slipped into her mailbox stamped with the HOA's seal, Emily's hands trembled. She had no idea that the fight for her dog would soon become a fight for her dignity, her family, and her very right to call Meadowbrook home. Harassment unleashed. The letter was blunt and cold. It claimed Max was a nuisance animal and demanded Emily take immediate corrective measures. Failure to comply, it warned, would result in fines. At first, Emily tried to reason with herself that it was an error. Max was gentle, obedient, and beloved by her neighbors' children. But when she looked around the street, she noticed curtains twitching and whispers traveling like wildfire. Karen's influence was spreading. The harassment came quickly after. Fines appeared weekly, each steeper than the last. One cited excessive noise. Another claimed Max was visibly intimidating, despite being a medium-sized rescue who barely barked. Karen herself began appearing on Emily's porch, clipboard in hand, scribbling notes about the length of her grass or the state of her fence. But her eyes always drifted to Max, as if the dog's very existence was an insult to her authority. Emily's attempts to explain fell on deaf ears. Letters she mailed to the HOA office were ignored, phone calls left unanswered. The HOA's board was under Karen's control, and her word was law. Soon, the harassment turned public. At an HOA meeting, Karen stood before a crowded room and declared that certain residents were lowering the standards of Meadowbrook by keeping unruly animals. Though she never named Emily directly, every eye in the room turned toward her. The humiliation was crushing. Lily came home from school in tears, saying her friends whispered that Max was going to be taken away. The dog, sensing the tension, grew restless, his usual joyful energy dimmed by the heavy air of fear inside their home. Emily tried to reassure her daughter, but the weight of isolation pressed harder with each passing day. The fines reached thousands of dollars. Notices threatened liens against her home if she refused to pay. Still, Emily held firm. She had done nothing wrong, and Max was innocent. Yet as the walls closed in, a painful truth became clear. This wasn't just about her dog. It was about power, control, and Karen's determination to bend Emily to her will. One evening, as Emily sifted through another pile of threatening letters, she realized the battle could not be avoided. The HOA wasn't going to stop. If she wanted to protect Max and her family, she would have to prepare for a fight she never imagined she'd face. And so as the sun set over Meadowbrook's picture-perfect lawns, Emily quietly vowed she would not lose Max. Not to Karen, not to the HOA, not to anyone. The escalation Karen escalated her war with precision. She began photographing Emily's house daily, circling the property like a hawk. Every minor detail was recorded. A leaf out of place, a toy left in the yard, even Lily's bicycle leaning against the fence. Each was transformed into an official violation. The HOA newsletters grew more hostile. Without naming Emily, Karen filled them with passive-aggressive reminders about dangerous pets and irresponsible residents who threatened community harmony. Neighbors who once smiled politely began to distance themselves, fearing Karen's wrath. Invitations to block parties and neighborhood gatherings stopped arriving. Emily and Lily were slowly being exiled from the community. The most chilling blow came when an official notice arrived. The HOA demanded that Max be removed from the property within 30 days. If Emily failed, they threatened legal action and further financial penalties. The ultimatum was clear: choose between her dog and her home. The night she received the letter, Emily sat on her porch with Max curled at her feet. The air was thick with despair. Losing Max was unthinkable. He had been there through the darkest chapters of her life, offering unconditional love when the world turned cold. To give him up would be to surrender the very heart of her family. But Karen underestimated one thing: Emily's resilience. She had survived heartbreak, financial struggle, and the judgment of others before. She would not allow an HOA, no matter how powerful, to dictate the fate of her family. The thought of fighting back terrified her, yet something inside her burned stronger than fear, a fierce determination to stand her ground. Emily began researching. She pored over HOA bylaws, property rights, and legal precedents. She discovered that the HOA had overstepped in multiple ways. Their fines were excessive, their rules inconsistently applied, and their targeting of Max had no legal justification. Piece by piece, she built her case. But Emily knew she couldn't do it alone. With trembling hands, she contacted a local attorney who specialized in HOA disputes. When she explained her situation, the attorney's tone shifted from polite professionalism to sharp interest. It wasn't the first time they'd heard of Karen or Meadowbrook's abusive practices, and this time, the HOA might have gone too far. The countdown had begun. 30 days to remove Max, or 30 days until the battle truly began. For Emily, there was no choice at all. The next chapter of her life would unfold in a courtroom where the truth would finally come to light. The breaking point, the weeks leading to the court filing, were suffocating. Karen doubled her efforts, patrolling Emily's street with an air of victory, certain that her pressure campaign was working. Flyers appeared in mailboxes warning of irresponsible dog owners and hinting that property values were in danger. Emily's phone buzzed constantly with HOA reminders of fines unpaid. Yet beneath the storm, Emily's resolve solidified. With her attorney's guidance, she gathered evidence. Every letter, every fine, every photo. Neighbors who quietly sympathized began slipping her notes of support. One elderly resident confided that Karen had forced him to repaint his home 3 times in a single year. Another revealed she'd been fined for hosting her granddaughter's birthday party. Karen's tyranny extended far beyond Max, and Emily was no longer standing alone. The day the lawsuit was filed, a new energy surged through Emily's veins. She was no longer a victim of Karen's intimidation. She was a challenger, armed with truth and the law. The community buzzed with gossip as word spread. A single mother had dared to sue the HOA. Karen laughed it off in public, but behind her, cracks began to show. Court dates were set and the waiting game began. Emily spent sleepless nights rehearsing her statements, reliving every moment of harassment. She thought about Lily, who clung to Max tighter than ever, and reminded herself that this battle was about more than property rules. It was about teaching her daughter that courage mattered, that bullies could be defeated, and that love was worth fighting for. As the trial date approached, tension rippled through Meadowbrook. Some residents whispered in awe of Emily's bravery, while others feared the fallout if she won. For Emily, the path was clear. There would be no surrender. Max's future and her family's dignity would be decided in the courtroom. The countdown had begun. 30 days to remove Max, or 30 days until the battle truly began. For Emily, there was no choice at all. The next chapter of her life would unfold in a courtroom, where the truth would finally come to light. The courtroom battle. The courthouse buzzed with anticipation the morning of the trial. Reporters had caught wind of the case, intrigued by the spectacle of a single mother taking on an entire HOA. Karen arrived in her crisp blazer, flanked by board members, exuding smug confidence. Emily entered quietly, Max's collar hidden in her purse as a silent symbol of what she was fighting for. The proceedings began with the HOA presenting their case. They painted Max as a menace, claiming endless complaints, fabricated noise violations, and exaggerated safety concerns. Their evidence, however, was paper-thin. Grainy photos of Max sitting peacefully in the yard, logs of noise complaints, without timestamps or corroboration. The courtroom murmured as the cracks in their narrative became glaring. When it was Emily's turn, her attorney presented a meticulous counterattack. Stacks of letters proved the HOA's harassment campaign. Financial records showed the outrageous escalation of fines. Witness statements from supportive neighbors revealed Karen's pattern of targeting residents unfairly. And then came the most powerful moment: Lily's testimony. Though young, her words carried the weight of truth as she described how Max had been her best friend, her protector, her source of comfort since her parents' divorce. The courtroom fell silent, the humanity of the case undeniable. Karen's composure faltered. She snapped at questions, contradicted her own statements, and revealed the vindictive obsession driving her actions. The more she tried to control the narrative, the more the mask slipped, exposing the pettiness beneath her authority. Days of testimony stretched on, but the tide had turned. The case was no longer about a dog. It was about justice, about exposing abuse of power, and about the courage to stand against intimidation. As the final arguments concluded, Emily sat with her hands trembling. The decision would soon come, and with it, the fate of Max, her home, and the community that had been torn apart by Karen's iron grip. Justice served. The judge's decision came on a crisp morning, the courtroom filled with anticipation. With measured words, the judge delivered the verdict. The HOA had grossly overstepped its authority. Their fines were declared unlawful, their actions discriminatory, and their attempt to force the removal of Max was struck down entirely. Gasps echoed through the room. Karen's face blanched, her composure shattered. The HOA was ordered to refund Emily's fines, pay damages for emotional distress, and submit to an external review of their practices. For the first time, Karen's power crumbled under the weight of accountability. Tears welled in Emily's eyes as relief washed over her. She thought of the sleepless nights, the endless fear, the crushing isolation. And then she thought of Max, waiting at home, tail wagging, blissfully unaware of the war fought in his name. The community shifted in the aftermath. Neighbors who had once stayed silent began speaking out, emboldened by Emily's victory. Meadowbrook slowly transformed from a place of fear to one of resilience. Karen resigned in disgrace, her reign of control over. That evening, Emily sat on her porch with Lily and Max, the sun setting in brilliant hues across the sky. The air felt lighter, freer, as if the neighborhood itself had been unchained. Max barked playfully, chasing after a butterfly, his joy infectious. Emily knew the scars of the battle would remain, but they were reminders of something greater, of courage found in the face of oppression, of love that defied control, and of the unbreakable bond between a mother, her child, and the loyal dog who had given them strength. The fight was over, but its legacy lived on. Emily had proven that even in the most rigid communities, even against the most controlling forces, justice could prevail. And at the heart of it all was Max, the dog they tried to take away, but who instead became the symbol of a family's unyielding victory.